Hey, greetings. This is Fred in Alaska. Thanks for joining me today. In the near future, I'll be sharing with you guys some pretty insanely crazy events that happened over the course of the last few days. Insane. So, what I wanted to share with you today, this comes from Blake and Riley, and they were up in Alaska for a little RV adventure, right? They had planned ahead like a year, saved the money, because it's expensive up here, especially traveling around, all the expense of, meals and all that. They figured rent an RV, be self-sufficient, self-contained, we'll have a place to cook, sleep, and all that, and we can guide ourselves around. Fair enough. I mean, hey, I'd do the same thing if I was in that, in the same position. So Blake and Riley, this was basically for their 5th wedding anniversary, right? And they decided to come towards the end of summer, beginning of fall. Riley, his wife, really enjoyed fall, the colors and all that. And so, hey, fair enough. Well, they get up there, they plan to be up here 2 weeks. And during the first week, it was beautiful. The weather was great. They went up by Denali, from Anchorage, and then into Fairbanks, and then back on down. And on the way back down, they took the Richardson going towards Glen Allen, right? They got to Glen Allen, and they were like, let's backtrack a little bit and head back towards Denali. It was so beautiful. And there was, some more pictures that Riley wanted to take. And why not? They still got another week. They're at their own schedule. So, as they're heading back and they're taking the Denali Highway from Paxton, it was this particular day, it was getting on into darkness, and they were both pretty tired from just the constant running and the excitement. Being in Alaska, the fresh air, all of it was just, it was catching up to them, and so they decided, hey, we'll just pull off the side of the road, and just camp right here, which many people do. I mean, guys in their pickup trucks do that. I've done that, so why not? So they pull off, they do their little procedure to make sure they're level and stuff like that. And this particular pull-off is not too far from the Triangle Lakes pull-off, that goes, has a trail to Sweet Lake and on down to the Alphabets and stuff. A spot with many encounters from the past, So, where they were parked, they had just come up. Anyone who's been there, you coming out of Paxton, you come up to a point where you got this little switchback that gets up onto this higher plateau. And so they were just past that, and the particular spot they picked was on the right-hand side of the road, heading towards Denali. Now, this is very near the same area where a couple of women had some crazy stuff happen, right? So, they get set up, everything's level for, the stuff they needed to do as far as the requirements for the RV and whatnot. And there was a small slide out that they extended out, and then they dropped the awning. And, as they were getting things set up, people were driving by, they would wave, no biggie, and it wasn't a very clear day that day. It was low ceiling, they couldn't see as clearly, and so it wasn't bad, but, it wasn't the photo opportunities that Riley was hoping for. But no big deal, they still had time, and, so they sat there, they made their dinner, and they came out and had some lawn chairs underneath the awning that they had out, and they're basically facing south. So they're on the north side of the road and they're facing south. They're just sitting in their chairs, and periodically some of them would drive by, and it was just calm. It was relaxing. So they're both really tired. They, especially after eating, and they were already burnt out, from just travel, and so excited it was hard to sleep. They decide, hey, well, let's just turn in and we'll start bright and early and, continue on. So Blake said, Riley went in, was cleaning up a little bit of the mess they had in there or whatever, and he was just kind of walking around the area, making sure he accounted for everything, you know, as far as the RV requirements and whatnot. And he goes to the back. He, you know, slides out the little, or removes a little panel and slides out this little thing that was holding the little generator on it. And he fires it up because they were gonna fall asleep watching a movie. And so when he put fuel in this particular little generator, he found that if he only put in like a half a gallon, that it would run long enough for a movie or two and then just die out, and he wouldn't have to worry about getting up, going outside and shutting it off, right? So, I mean, hey, you know, why not? So he does all that. He gets inside, and, you know, they select their movie and stuff, and they're kicked back. And so where they decided they were gonna like crash out was where the little slide out is, where the seating area was. The tabletop drops down, and then it kind of turns into a mattress, little sleeping area right there, right about not quite the size of a double bed. But they cozied up there, and they were watching their movie, and they fell asleep. Now, dog's dreaming. So they fell asleep, and Blake remembers, you know, being in that fog and hearing the generator, you know, dying down from being out of gas, but it was kind of doing the little fluctuation thing. So he listened to it for a second and just fades back out. He has no idea what time it was when that happened. He said it couldn't have been too much longer after that all of a sudden the whole thing just kind of shook. And he said it shook hard. He said so hard that, like, it was startling, right? So immediately they're up, you know, and, you know, Riley, she's digging around for this little headlamp they had, and they also had this little LED lantern, right, where, you know, it took batteries. It was shaped like an old school kerosene lantern, but it was actually LED lights in it, you know. And so she finds that stuff and she turns it on. She sets it on one of the little smaller tables right across from them, and they're looking at each other, and they're talking, and they could hear movement outside, and they were kind of, what the hell is that? You know, Blake immediately is starting to yell out, hey, because again, it was startling how hard it shook. It just, you know, it felt like, you know, another vehicle had struck it or something. So Riley's like, calm down, quiet down, listen. And Blake is like, I'm not going to be quiet. And Riley calms down and says, listen. And they could hear movement, right? And so Blake's, you know, had it. He was like, someone, you know, he didn't know if it, you know, they were struck. He didn't know because they were woken up by this violent shake. So he grabs that little lantern and he goes out the door. And he said when he got out the door, he could tell that the back end of that RV had slid probably 2-3 feet. And so immediately he's holding up the lantern, he's looking around, he's yelling out, who's out here? Doesn't hear nothing. A moment later, Riley comes out with the headlamp on, right? And he's holding up the lantern, and because she had a more focused beam on her headlamp, he was like, hey, you know, point your headlamp over in this direction. They did, and then, you know, down the road, then up the road, and across the road. And he goes and he sets down where they had their two lawn chairs sitting. They were still sitting, but they had closed them up and just kind of laid them down on the ground right there, because again, it was under the awning, right? But with the shift and everything, it was, you know, a little different. But he had popped one of those chairs up real quick and set the lantern down on it and asked Riley for the headlamp. And she hands it to him. She grabs the lantern, goes back inside, and he starts walking around the thing. And he had picked up a couple big rocks, right? Because they heard something out there, and the whole place just shook. So Blake knew that someone was out here. So he's yelling, hey, you know, we don't appreciate it. You know, we're here visiting the state. And what he assumed initially was like some locals, not like in tourists, which I understand. You know, it's one of those things. However, he goes around to the back side, and he notices the way that the back end was pushed. It was off onto the softer part of the shoulder, right on the gravel. And so he was a little concerned about that. He was kind of looking at it, and again, he's got the headlamp on. And he hears something. And it sounds like it's directly off to his right. So he turns and he looks. and he doesn't see anything. He's looking and looking, and then as he's doing so, he notices this shade of reddish brown that doesn't quite match the rest of the terrain, right? And this was just past the brush off the side of the road, and the way that the road went down in his position, it was just beyond the brush. However, in the scheme of things, it was probably 50 feet away, right? And so he's looking, and he starts focusing on this weird, reddish brown color, and he was like, something was off, and he immediately felt panicked inside, and as he was kind of like trying to figure out what the hell he was looking at, because it was just so out of place with all the other colors of the tundra and the brush and stuff, he said he backed up, and he backed up into that open little slide out for the generator, and that caught his attention. So he turned back real quick because he was startled by it. And then when he turned back, all of a sudden this reddish brown thing or whatever it was that was just over there, all of a sudden he noticed movement, and he follows it, right? And he's watching, and he's trying to, the way it's moving is pretty fast, but it's quiet. So he's trying to keep up with it and figure out what the hell he's seeing. And as he's doing so, he's just noticing this reddish brown, and he was like, bear. Oh crap, bear. So what he does is he turns around and goes back around the backside, and not the same direction this thing was moving. Goes around the backside and gets back into the RV. And he was like, it was a bear. I just saw a bear over there, and Riley's like, calm down. It's Alaska, there's bears, let's, we have bear spray somewhere, let's just make sure we have it handy. Maybe it came in because it smelled our food, right? We cleaned up, but still the food smell's gonna linger. And so they're explaining this away. As they're doing so, this particular RV was open all the way into the front where you can see out the front window. And there was this little partition thing that you could slide closed or what have you, for privacy or whatever. And it wasn't closed. They didn't close it before they went to sleep. And so they're sitting there talking and explaining away this bear. And the way Blake was standing, he was facing towards the front of the RV. Riley's in front of him, kind of sitting down on that little bed thing, and they're talking about this bear. And he had turned off the headlamp, but he still had it on. And as they're talking, going back and forth or whatever, he glances towards the front, and he notices something odd outside of the window. He sat there for a second, looked back at Riley, continued the conversation, but then was drawn back again because he saw movement. So he clicked on the light, right? The interior light where she had the little lantern going, the little LED lantern. It didn't have enough candela power, enough light power basically to fully see what he saw movement. Because again, they're thinking bear. He was half expecting a bear to be kind of looking in the window, but when he turned on the headlamp with the more focused beam of light, it wasn't a bear. He said this thing looked like a caveman. It looked like it was very curious. It had its hands on the hood of the RV and was kind of leaning and looking, and then when he turned on the lamp and saw it try to avert its eyes and stuff, he said it put its hands up, and its hand was massive. And he said he freaked out, and that's when Riley turned, she saw it and screamed. And, all of a sudden this thing disappears out of view. And so immediately he was like, that was a caveman. Holy, what the hell? And Riley's like, what did you see? She's on the verge of just, needing some medication to calm down. And Blake tells her, hey, I saw it, had a big hand. It looked like a caveman, and other than that, I don't know. And so they're discussing it, and at this point they're talking in hushed tones. And Blake said that he started shaking, had to sit down next to his wife, and he's sitting there, and he was like, I don't know what the hell a caveman is doing, but that was a caveman. That was not a suit. That couldn't have been a costume. I saw its eyes. Its eyes had a little bit of a red eye shine to it, and the way it moved, it wasn't someone in a suit. You know, because in those moments, Riley was like, you know, trying to explain it away. Maybe it was someone playing a prank. Maybe it was this, and you know, he was like, no, it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a prank. This, whatever it was alive. You know, it wasn't a suit. So they're discussing, you know, what to do. They got stuff outside. They got the little slide out open. They got the generator that needs to be, you know, closed up. And the thing of it is they knew without the slide out going in and the other stuff, the RV wouldn't go into gear. So, excuse me. So they start brainstorming what they're going to do, and immediately Riley's up. She's moving everything she has to bring in the slide in. She does that, and you know, Blake is like, we got that generator. We need to, you know, close it and shut the panel. And she goes, don't worry about that right now. Let's just go. And he goes, well, hold on. The awning. We gotta tend to the awning. There's those jacks that drop down to help level the thing. We gotta adjust those. You know, there's certain things we have to do in order to, you know, not have to pay out a whole lot of money or basically buy this thing. And so they take a little bit, they calm down, they find that bear spray, that canister of bear spray, and he has Riley shine out the window. He has on the headlamp, but she's holding up that lantern at the window. And for whatever reason, I think sometimes when people go into shock, because I had a conversation with Blake briefly about this, I was like, what was the purpose of having her hold the lantern up in the window? Because it's not going to cast all that much light. He was like, he honestly didn't know. You know, he was probably like, you know, wanted her to feel like she was part of it, or keep her eyes out on him to make sure he was safe, whatever it worked out to be. He wasn't quite sure. It was just what came out. And so he goes out, he's got the bear spray. He tends to the one jack just outside the door, back behind the back tire. Tends to that, goes around, shuts the generator in, shuts the panel, takes care of the jack that's right underneath that area. And then he goes up to the front, and they only use the outside one up front. And so at this point, Riley's on the inside, she's up at the front, you know, inside the cab, up in the windshield and stuff, holding up the lamp. And he reaches down and he's doing what he has to do with this little handle, and he gets that taken care of, and he comes around and he has the headlamp on, and he glances up because he heard a oof sound. He looks across the road, and then the brush across the road, there's this thing standing there watching him, and he freezes. Now where he stops, he's back around basically at the driver's side door almost when hears the sound and looks across, and so he's frozen, right? And he's trying to assess again what he's seeing, because he's just so thrown off, he said, by the appearance of this thing. He said it was every bit of 9 foot tall, if not taller, but at least 9 foot tall, very wide. And he said it just how it was acting, the overwhelming fear he had, right? Well, while he's stuck staring and, you know, just not making a noise or anything, just, you know, like full of indecision, do I move, will it attack, if you know, this, will it attack, you know, he was basically stuck in fear. And as he's snapping out of it, he turns, and as he's going back towards the door, he starts yelling out, get out of here, you know, something along those lines. There's some explicitives in there, but you know, there's no need. So as he's getting back to the door, all of a sudden it flies open, and there's Riley. And she had found one of their other flashlights that they had stored away somewhere, and it was one of those old mag lights, right? It was like a 4D cell battery one of those big old law enforcement looking types. And she had that on and saw it and started yelling, get out of here. But what Blake did not notice is she had that bear spray in her hand, right? And he didn't even notice because of everything going on. Then all of a sudden he sees her raise her hand and yell at it and start spraying this bear spray. Now, it came out in a huge plume. It was evident in the light, you know, because his headlamp and her with the flashlight, this cloud just enveloped across the street. I mean, and again, the road isn't very wide. You know, it's be considered a primitive road. You know, just gravel. And as this cloud surrounded this thing across the street, across the road, all of a sudden they hear this hellacious noise. It was like a hack, sneeze, cough all at once, and then the loudest, most thunderous scream. Like it was growl, scream, all of it mixed in one, and they heard it thrashing through the brush, and immediately it sounded like it was coming at them, so they rushed inside, shut the door. No sooner than the door shut, they feel the back end again, bam, just hard, real hard, like. And at that point, that's where Blake was concerned that the ass end might be so far off on the soft part of the shoulder that they may not be able to like drive out of there. So he immediately runs up to the front. The keys that they had sitting in the center little area had knocked off from where they were. So he's looking around. He finds the keys. He starts up the vehicle, and he said when he put it in drive, when he initially gave it gas, it kind of peeled out a little bit, so he gunned it, and it caught enough traction to just work itself up, and they took off down the road. The whole time he was driving down the road, Riley was screaming, "Don't stop, don't stop," and she was at the very back, and in the very back there was this little small window in the middle, and when she looked out, there was kind of half of it was obscured by the ladder that led up to the top of the RV, but she was looking out the back, and she saw it almost keeping up with the RV, and then it took off, broke off its chase, and then went off into the tundra. She went over the other window, and by then it had disappeared into the night. He said they drove all the way from where they were to somewhere here in Wasilla. He doesn't know exactly where. It was some electrical place, and the way he was describing it, I assume Brown's Electric over by, near Main Street, or Lucille. But they made it to there and parked before they felt comfortable enough to rest. I want to thank them for reaching out. For a lot of people, they investigate and go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, after they had an experience that they can't explain. And so it was very similar for Blake and Riley. They went down looking for answers of any kind, and they let it go for a while, and then started looking back into it. And then when they started their Google search or whatever, they found the channel and reached out and whatnot. But I appreciate them reaching out. I appreciate them being patient with the time it took to connect and hear their story. And again, that area, geez, I don't know how many offhand there's encounters there's been over there. There's been some right near Monaghan Flats there, Sweet Lake Trail, Golcana River south of there, the Alphabets. There's a lot. And again, I want to thank them for reaching out and sharing. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one.